Today we're going to come in the kitchen and make a risotto, but right now we're going to prepare for what we're going to do later, because to make a really nice risotto we need a really nice broth. And because we have all of these vegetables that I've been putting in the fridge, every time I've peeled something and gotten rid of something, so we have carrots and potato peel and parts of onion, parts of a leek, celery, and I just looked in the fridge and I had another part of a stalk of celery that's just about over, so I'm going to put it in as well. I went out to the herb garden and got some thyme, just putting that in. I'm going to use some pepper. You could use black pepper or white pepper. This just happens to be many colored pepper. I'm going to throw that in, just a little pepper. And bay leaves, super important, bay leaves for a really nice hearty broth. Probably about 4 or 5 leaves, because I'm making quite a bit of broth. I'm going to make enough broth to do for today's risotto and to be the base of the soup for tomorrow. So for the risotto ingredients, I need a very special rice. It's an arborio rice. It's a very short, fat grain so that the rice itself will be creamy. Because the rice needs a protein to complete it, needs something to complete it and help be a protein, I'm going to add a little quinoa. So I'm going to use later 1.5 cups of rice and 1/2 cup of quinoa to make my risotto. And at the same time, just so that we can have a nice little warm salad tonight, little slices of fresh tomatoes that are beautiful, these heirloom tomatoes, and fresh oregano and fresh basil from the garden. I'm going to layer it with these big white Corona beans, and really big white Corona beans, also these big Italian beans. I'm going to put a few of those in the pressure cooker, probably just 4 or 5 each person, because I'm just going to be on top of the salad. But I'm going to cook in the pressure cooker the beans and make my stock, and then we'll come back later, okay? Okay, so we're gonna do mushroom risotto, as I said, and I've been keeping the mushrooms in a brown paper bag in the fridge. That's an important thing to know, that you shouldn't leave the mushrooms in a plastic bag when you bring them home from the market, or even a fake plastic bag. They don't need to sweat. So a brown paper bag is excellent for that. So for the mushrooms, I'm gonna grind a lot of them because I want little tiny mushroom pieces. So I'm going to take the stems out of all of these mushrooms and grind them. And then I'm going to slice, and if I break anything, I'm just going to put it in ready to grind. Then I'm going to slice up the rest of the mushrooms and saute them in the pan that I'm going to actually be making the risotto in, so that it has all of the flavor of the mushrooms. But we're going to keep the whole mushrooms, the whole sliced mushrooms. We're going to keep those for garnish and to fold in at the very last minute so that they don't turn all mushy and lose all of their consistency. Good. So notice I have here in front, I have my arborio rice. I left the bag for you to see. And I have quinoa because I want it to be a full protein meal, not just rice. So I have 1.5 cups of rice, arborio, and then I have 1/3 cup of quinoa, which is plenty quinoa. It can be a little challenging to digest for some people. It is a pure protein. It's a seed. It's not a grain. And, well, I guess all seeds and grains are very similar. But it is known as a seed with a complete protein, like many seeds and nuts and things, okay? So here we have all of our mushroom caps. I have a couple of broken ones. I'm just going to toss in here. Good. And then with this, I'm going to take a little bit of onion. I have a little bit of a red onion, which is a little milder. So I'm just going to cut it into a couple of slices. Because the processor will do everything, I'm just going to cut it now into 4ths and then throw it into the food processor. Good. Yes, you could chop all these finely by hand, absolutely. Okay? Good. So turning it on, and I'm just going to pulse it for a moment. see, it's a nice fine chop. Okay, good. So this is what we're going to actually use when we start the risotto. For now, I want to slice and fry up these mushrooms in a little bit of olive oil. And yeah, I think I'll get the mushrooms started in the pan and then we'll come right back, okay? Okay, just finishing slicing up the mushrooms. And into the pan, I'm going to put some olive oil. Just enough. Mushrooms, of course, do absorb quite a bit of oil. I'm going to throw them in. Put a little sprinkling of salt. Good. And then just let them saute for just a little while. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to start preparing the liquid that I'm going to be using in the risotto. So I guess you could use water, but usually you use a broth. So remember, I made a vegetable broth, and here it is. Okay, it's hot. I need the liquid to be hot when I get ready to put it into the risotto. So it's carrots and celery and onion and potato peel, carrot peel, anything that almost went to the compost. Instead, it's going here. I'm going to start with 4 cups in a minute when it's time to put in the rice. Okay, so I should have enough for my risotto and also for one more soup tomorrow or even this evening. If we wanted a light soup for dinner after having a nice heavy risotto for lunch, then we can have the base of the soup the same wonderful, beautiful vegetable broth. So the mushrooms are all nice and sauteed, just letting them take on a little bit of color. So I'm going to put them away, turning down my flame a little, but I'm keeping it on because I have to light my flame every time. Good. Just reserving them on a plate for later. Great. And then in the same pan, which I do not want to wash, in this same pan, I'm going to put in the chopped onion with the chopped mushroom. I'm going to let this saute for a little while until it becomes soft and a little translucent. Then I'm going to add the rice and the quinoa and toss them around a bit. I'll show you that. For now, I'm just trying to clean out the whole processor. If you use a processor, you really need to use a spatula because a lot of things stay behind, and you make sure that you get them all, especially with things that are nice and expensive, like mushrooms. Good. So why is Ginger making risotto? Isn't that Italian? And she's not Italian? Well, you know, I am. I am because my stepfather was Italian. So my comfort food from age 7 on is Italian food. So I learned to make a lot of things that to me were just homey and delicious. His secret spice, of course, was oregano, which was very hard to come by back in the 50s. Okay, so this is now getting a little softer. I'm going to let it continue for just a moment, and then I'm going to stir in the rice and the quinoa, just for a moment, just to get a little bit of toast on the rice and the quinoa, okay? Hold on for 1 sec. Here comes the rice. Remember, 1.5 cups of rice and 1/3 cup of quinoa. I could have used a different color quinoa and had a more exciting plate of risotto, but I only have white. Good. Okay, so just letting this toast a little bit. Good. smells fragrant with the grains beginning to open, pop, toast, roast. Good. And about risotto, we're going to be adding broth to it the whole time it's cooking. We're never going to let it become dry. It's always going to stay moist the whole time we're cooking. Okay? So I'm going to take the hot liquid I'm going to cover it completely, bring it to a boil, a really low, slow boil. I'm turning it up just a little bit to get my boil on. And then I'm going to turn it down super low and continue to cook it, adding liquid, refilling my broth and adding liquid as much as I need to keep this all nice and moist, okay? The whole time moist. While we're here, I also want to show you, you remember I said we were going to do a salad with some white beans. So I cooked the Corona beans here in the pressure cooker. Maybe get a little glimpse into the pressure cooker. So I'm going to strain those beans in a little while. So it'll just be those big fat white beans with some fresh oregano, fresh basil, fresh sliced heirloom tomato for our salad later. Maybe a little avocado if we have one that's ripe and ready to go. Okay? So those are the white beans. We have our broth. We have our risotto cooking. Okay? That's it for right now. So I want you to see, this is about probably halfway through the cooking, how the rice is swelling. And it needs to swell and relatively pop. It just needs to get a lot bigger. But I wanted you to see how it looked about halfway through. And also, let's back up a tiny bit. There are the white Corona beans that I've strained out. We'll use those for the salad. Just for you to know, if you take them out of the water completely, they get really hard really fast. So it's really just good to know that they need to be in moisture until you're about to slide them onto a plate somewhere. Okay? So when this is done, we'll come back. Herb garden. This is attached to the kitchen, to the dining room. We have a little bit of everything: mint, oregano, some onions, thyme, lots of new green basil. We have lots of purple basil, tulsi. I'm going to grab some of this big oregano. This is really big, furry, large leaf oregano, which I had never seen until I was here in Guatemala. And a friend of mine shared a cutting with me, and it takes over really quickly. There are 3 of us, so I've got 1 leaf for each of us and 1 for the pot. Okay? We're going to come and get a little of this traditional oregano. I'm going down where it is attaching, grabbing it at the bottom. I'm going to get 1 more because they're so beautiful and so fresh. Good. And then I'm going to get a little bit of basil. This basil's almost on its way out, but the leaves are still super tasty. Good. So I'm going to take these in, rinse them. This whole plant is being cut back now because it's ready to have another plant come and take its place. It will reflower down below. Everything nice and beautiful below. 1 more. Good. So this is our herbs that we're going to use with our salad. This is my herb drying. This is what a lettuce dryer looked like before they made plastic ones, okay? So I just folded everything up into a large towel, and you saw what I did, and now I have dried, clean herbs ready to chop. That was fun. Okay, so we're gonna have our heirloom tomatoes. We're gonna slice them not too thin, and we're gonna use a couple of slices on each plate. So a yellow one and a red one on each plate. I'm just gonna make 1 for now. These are the Italian plum tomatoes, and they're really big and huge and gorgeous, which are what we usually have here in Guatemala, but a much smaller size. So I'm going to use this big fat Roma. Good, okay. So let me grab a plate. Now, if I were eating toast right now, I would probably put a piece of sourdough toast below this, okay? So I might have just a nice piece of sourdough bread underneath, and then on top of the sourdough, oh, you know what? I have a couple of croutons. Hold on. I have these two little sourdough croutons I made yesterday. So let's try and use that. They happen to lend themselves beautifully to the shape of the tomatoes I cut. Isn't that special? Okay. So to this, I'm going to put a little bit of salt. Just a tiny little bit of salt. A tiny bit of olive oil. And then I'm going to work with the herbs. So the basil, I'm just going to take all the leaves off. Chop it finely. The oregano, same thing. I'm just going to strip the leaves and chop it finely. And this big fat elephant oregano, which is hiding somewhere. Where did I lose it? Here it is, sorry. Okay, this oregano, I'm just going to slice off and chop very finely. Okay, and then other way. I want to have just little tiny cubes of this oregano. A large piece of it could be overpowering, so we really want to keep these little tiny slivers. Good. And then to the basil, I'm just going to grab a couple more leaves, because since I'm just doing one salad. Great. And I'm just going to wad them up together, grab a few more oregano leaves, make a nice little wad of herbs, and slice them. Notice my fingers are tucked back. It's a nice way to not hurt yourself. Good. Great. Okay. I think I'll like a couple of grinds of black pepper. Good. And then I might serve at the table a little of a vinaigrette dressing that each person could serve themselves if they'd like a little bit. I used to have a gazpacho salad that this reminds me of. It had bread on the bottom and all the sliced tomatoes and all of the herbs on top. This smells so good. I can't even tell you how good it smells. For the pièce de résistance, those beautiful, tasty, gorgeous Corona beans. Since they're big and fat and meaty, everybody just gets a couple. Again, a couple of grains of salt, even though I had a little bit of salt in the water I left them in. Another sprinkling, just to have a little more color. Good. And our salad is ready. And now I have added at least 8 cups of liquid, and I've set aside another 4 cups just in case for now. And to my broth, I'm going to go ahead and strain all of it into a pan to use for our soup later on this evening. So I just want to strain it all, pushing it all. It's a little hot. Just move it around a little bit in case there's anything left over on the other side that didn't come out. Good. And then I'm going to let it cool off and squeeze it one more bit. So the rest of this broth will be the base of tonight's soup and anything that's left over from this broth. So we're ready for this evening's light soup. While the risotto is cooking, we're just going to let it cook down a little bit more. Don't let it stick. Just keep adding liquid as you go. All right, so we're almost ready with our lunch. Here we go, adding the mushrooms to the risotto. The whole ones, just enough to get them all nice and warm. Lots of delicious mushrooms. Gonna keep a few on top just for a little garnish. So just stirring them in. I'm going to let the mushrooms heat up completely while I finish the other salads. I've got all of my herbs and spices all chopped up, my basil, my 2 types of oregano. They're all nice and chopped. So here's the salad. Remember, a little bit of olive oil. And one person is not having bread, so still the olive oil. Some of the greens. Good. And then I'm going to get the beans. Really beautiful, huge, meaty Corona beans. Great. Okay. And a little bit of salt. Good. Tiny bit of black pepper. Great. And now we're ready to serve up the risotto. So it should still be creamy, creamy, creamy. And the risotto is served in a bowl. Okay? So I'm going to turn off the flame, grab my bowls. Good. And we're going to serve a few scoops. You can cover the bottom of the dish. Good. Make sure I've got a couple of mushrooms right on top. Good. And then I saved a few sprigs of just fresh basil to go on top, just so that it would look really pretty. Okay, just nice, beautiful, fresh basil. So I'm gonna do all 3 dishes. Okay, so finally the risotto with the salad. Making sure that our table looks nice and pretty, using the best we have. Who else are you going to get it out for if not for yourself, right? So enjoying completely a wonderful meal. Buen provecho, bon appetit. Enjoy your food.